My name's Flo, I'm 26 years old and I live in Glasgow. For many young people like me, the future in Scotland feels uncertain. The climate and nature crises feel very real. It's difficult to talk about because it's scary as hell. I've been invited to take a journey across mainland Europe, where I'm told that in many places, nature is making a dramatic recovery. If this is true, I want to see it for myself and ask the simple question: why not Scotland? I grew up beside these woodlands for the first 18 years of my life, and I've got so many amazing memories of walking the dogs, playing with my friends, playing in the stream, climbing trees. I always feel so nostalgic when I come here and just got such good memories of being here. I don't think nature in Scotland is doing very well. I think eco-anxiety for me and many others is just seeing the destruction of nature everywhere and just being worried, you know, what's going to happen 10 years down the line, 20, 30, after my lifetime's over. Are things ever going to get better? Because it doesn't feel like it. To think what it might have been once compared to what it is now, it's just sad, really. Well, I'm assuming it had trees and more life, but now there's hardly anything. You look down there and no trees anywhere, not a single one. Just bare. So my journey begins not far from home in the West Highlands. I'm here to meet someone who's been studying Scotland's historical land use for more than 30 years. Before I venture overseas, there's a question I'd like answered here.
Scotland's known for its rolling hills and mountains, but so many of the ones I've seen are completely bare. Can you tell me why that is?
I mean, these are what are commonly described as cultural landscapes. So they're landscapes that are shaped by the culture of the people that own and use them. Woodland is the climax vegetation in the temperate regions where we are today, and therefore this would all be woodland. Then people came very slowly in small numbers to begin with and took advantage of the shelter that the forest provided and started settling and farming. So typically for maybe several thousand years, there'd be quite a bit of woodland, quite a lot of trees, but there'd also be pasture in amongst it, up until around the middle of the 19th century, by which time most of the trees would probably have gone. I mean, grazing pressures had got reasonably high then.
So things aren't really in balance as much as they used to be.
Yes. Then in the early 19th century and the later 19th century, you have the arrival of the hunting estate and also sheep ranching on a big scale. So local subsistence-based agriculture, these people either emigrated or indeed were cleared, forcibly evicted. And at that stage, the forest, if it is still there, doesn't really have a future because of the sheer amount of grazing going on.
What Andy was telling me about the land uses of the past made a lot of sense. I think, however, he sensed my despair at the way things are today.
Are you hopeful though, or
No.
You're not?
No, I'm not hopeful.
Do you try to be hopeful?
I want to be. I try and avoid the negative news stories where I can, but I think people have left it too late and there still isn't enough urgency.
never has succumbed to the feeling that you cannot change things. We have changed big things in the past.
The issues with Scottish land use are a lot more complex than I realised, about the landowners and the communities, and he really explained the fact that the way the land looks is, or at least can be, representative of society at the time. So if we now change our way of thinking, there's no reason that it can't become more full of trees and more full of life again.
Just on the train up to Aberdeen, flying out to Norway tomorrow morning. We're going to Norway to look at the differences between the landscape there and in Scotland, because where we are going to be in the southwest of Norway is going to be quite similar in terms of the latitude between Scotland and there. So it'll be interesting to see the woodland cover that they have there, and I think it'll give me a good idea of what Scotland could potentially look like in the future and what it probably looked like in the past. I'm here to meet Dr. Duncan Halley, a Scot who has lived in Norway for over 30 years and has spent much of that time exploring comparisons between the two countries.
Naturally, in Scottish Highlands, above the conifer belt, you then get a slow transition over to the birch belt. This is known as the birch belt in Norwegian, where birches are dominant. Then above about 900 metres, it becomes what Norwegians call the willow zone. But that just means that mountain willows are common. There are still often a lot of birches like where we are here.
So is it true that naturally Scotland would look more like this?
Yes, this is the natural cover of most of the Highlands of Scotland between about 700 to 1,000 metres.
So all woodland is not the same. Different trees and habitats develop at different altitudes. And all of these habitats should be present in Scotland. Duncan then took us higher in altitude.
Exactly where we are now is 990 metres above sea level. We're on granite. As you can see around us, we're still in the upper levels of what's called montane woodland, which is extinct as a habitat in Scotland. The cairngorms have a very similar climate to here. There's no biophysical reason why trees like this couldn't grow up to well above 900 metres in environments like the cairngorms. It's a matter of desire and policy as to whether it's done.
What would we in Scotland have to do to allow the cairngorms or other parts of Scotland to look like this again?
Well, the first thing would be reductions in grazing pressures so that the trees can grow up again, especially if there are only a few trees in the landscape. They'll be targeted quite heavily by any remaining animals. The second thing would be seed source. In many places there are no willows, and almost everywhere there are no birch of the forms that can survive at these altitudes. The evidence from Norway, where these woodlands have come back on a very large scale in the last century, is that it's very much a snowballing effect. It starts slowly and gets faster and faster. In Scotland, that could be shortened by some decades if strategic planting of trees, for example, that provide a seed source, were to happen once the grazing pressures were under control.
Okay. How do people in Norway generally feel about the reforestation of their country?
It was regarded as very positive. Nobody would like to go back to the completely open landscape of the past.
It's clear that Norway has far more native woodland than Scotland, and everything seems richer, more complex. But it's important to acknowledge cultural differences. In Norway, hunting is very much part of the country's social and cultural fabric, seen by many as a vital conservation measure.
For me personally, it's something deep inside me, I think. We don't have that many natural predators left in these areas. I would definitely say, especially when it comes to reindeer and red deer as well, which is increasing in Norway right now. And hunting is the only way to try to not to have the increase of population too fast.
So when you're hunting, you're almost replacing the predator, which there aren't enough of anymore, to keep the balance.
Yeah, that's the way it is in Norway right now.
So how would you actually feel about the return of large predators which used to hunt the animals which you kind of replace as hunters?
I would absolutely say that predators belong in these mountains. That I think the culture of hunting has to be taken care of as well. So it has to be a balance.
Balance. That word is going to keep coming up, I suspect. And it means different things to different people. I hadn't understood anything about tree lines in the birch belt before coming here. I didn't know that you'd naturally kind of change the type of forest as you get higher up a mountain. So that was really interesting to see with my own eyes and to know that Scotland once had that. But it might be the case that some of the birch, the most resilient birch, is now completely extinct. So we might need to do something to actually bring that back rather than just leaving the land completely like they were able to do here. The reason that a lot of forest regeneration happened in Norway was because people actually left the land. But we need to find a way to do it in Scotland with people there, with people at the heart of it, and with communities benefiting from it. Norway, you've been inspiring. On my return to Scotland, I'm keen to see with my own eyes the comparisons Duncan had described in Norway. Lana Richardson from Wildland Cairngorms was kind enough to take me into the mountains and show me more. Wildland has been working to regenerate this landscape for 20 years. So Flo, I've brought you to this area in particular, given the fact we've both been to Norway and we've witnessed the habitat out there at over 800 metres. So here currently we're at roughly 830 metres, which of course in Norway there was trees everywhere, lots of kind of shrubby willows, birch, but here, as you can see, there are no obvious trees. For the last 20 years, this area has been allowed to naturally regenerate, so the land has been rehabilitating. The deer numbers have been vastly reduced, so that doesn't just reduce browsing and grazing, but also trampling as well is a huge thing. When you've got a high number of deer, the ground very much suffers. In the lower reaches of the glen, where there's an ample seed source, the pine and the birch and the juniper and things have just boomed. It's undeniable the change that has gone on here. Higher up, where there's less of a seed source, obviously in some areas we've done some planting. So now actually in this area alone we've planted approximately 6 million trees. Wow. But in other areas it's not obvious from a distance, but if you really get in there and look closely, over the last few years especially, it's like a switch has just flipped and there's small birch, small rowan, there's willows, there's things really popping up everywhere. Well, looking at what I'm looking at here, I would usually feel kind of pessimistic, thinking, oh, no trees, it's quite bare, not a lot going on. But knowing that there's an active restoration project happening here makes me feel very positive about it. And it's almost like I'm witnessing the before of a beautiful before and after. Looking at the whole of Scotland, you don't know what's going to happen. In 50 years or even 10 years or even 5 years, someone might buy the land or whoever owns the land might change their mind about what to do with it. It's kind of scary how we're relying on the good faith of landowners to allow Scotland to recover. Down in the glen, as Lana said, the recovery is undeniable. It makes me wonder if we could see this elsewhere in Scotland. The regeneration is particularly obvious around the river, and it got me thinking. You don't see many rivers like this in Scotland, because it's meandering, it's not straight. There are trees all around it, and it seems to just kind of go where it needs to go. I feel like when water levels are different, it would just rise and maybe go into areas that it isn't at the moment. Rivers, water, wetlands. I don't remember thinking about them very much in the past. But I do know that very few rivers I see in Scotland look anything like this one. I'm beginning to wonder how rivers in different parts of Europe look and function. Just don't know what to expect, really. My mum got me a book all about Polish birds, and I brought it with me, even though it's massive. Ptaków Polski, Polish birds, and...
Anything in particular in there you want to see?
Oh, no, just everything. There's a white-tailed seagull. This is the Oder Delta, a huge, complex wetland system straddling the border of Germany and Poland. I've just
just seen an adder in here about a foot in from the path. It's really nice. It just feels like a massive nature reserve, but there's houses nearby and there's a lot of different parts to the land. You know, there's grassland, there's the water, there's reed beds, and there are loads of birds in the area.
I'm here to meet Petter Torkler from Rewilding Oder Delta, one of Europe's biggest wetland restoration projects. This whole area was previously drained for agriculture, but nature has found a way to bounce back.
The big change came in '95 when the flood destroyed the dikes, and then the water came back to this area. And there was a long process of discussions, conflicts of interest, shall it be recovered as agriculture or not? And then finally in 2018 the NABU Foundation, an environmental organization, was able to buy it. And this was also a case for inspiring us to designate this area also as rewilding area, the whole Oder Delta, because this is a unique example where you can see how natural processes come back into an area. The water came back, so it will become again a swamp, a peatland, and recover, regenerate. And we are convinced that this type of areas can be replicated in many other places. If we want to solve the climate crisis, we have also to solve the biodiversity crisis, because with a healthy ecosystem, you will do more for the climate than with any artificial measurement or action to reduce carbon emissions. So I think it must go hand in hand.
The climate crisis is inextricably linked to the nature crisis. We can't fix one without fixing both. Re-establishing natural flood areas may seem extreme, but they have a real benefit for people.
Wetlands, the peatlands, are working like sponges, and they buffer every high water event or every strong rain event. And this is also something that we face when we look in the current climate change. And I think wherever we have still open floodplains, I think we should take care of all these areas, because this is our life insurance in terms of flood protection.
I knew that water was important, but I saw wetlands as often just a field or two with water where you might get ducks and herons. I really didn't appreciate just how important it is for biodiversity on every level.
The wetlands are clearly great for nature, but can they bring economic opportunities as well? I'm crossing to the Polish side of the Delta to meet with Ivona, a tour guide who has pioneered new opportunities in nature-based tourism in her community.
You don't see bumpers like that these days, do you? Yeah, it's just a sign that there's a lot of insect life here. What's that sound that's behind me now? Is it like a...
It's a concert of frogs and of course birds, yeah? So we have around us many sounds, as you can hear.
Oh, that loud noise is frogs?
Yeah, the louder one is the frogs.
I've never heard that before. Did this land naturally retain water like hundreds of years ago? And if so, why doesn't it anymore?
Yeah, it's made by people, for people who want to live here and to make it for farming. Nowadays I can say that it's changing, because it is of course extensive meadow. There are extensive meadows, extensive pastures. For people, we do this nature tourism, yeah? So we try to change a little bit this, give people more chance, let's say, to take benefit. But it's not so easy, yeah? Because if you don't know nature, you can't see potential. So in the beginning, when we started this nature tourism, people were really surprising. Yeah? They said, Ivona, what they see? Yeah? I said, birds. Really? They come from, I don't know, Israel to see birds? I said, yeah, it is for that, yeah, because we have a special area here. Meadows, boring. What do they say? Yeah, it's not true. Yeah, but after that, they are changing. Yeah, when they see that people come here, watch nature, they started to realize that it can be interesting. So farmers started to go with binoculars. And then they start, Oh, nice. Yes, so we have this nice landscape, so we want to have it. And then they started to protect it. They started to create accommodation. They started to see that more people come. They see that they can rent rooms. And then people are coming here all over the year. There is all the time something interesting in nature, so they can rent it and they can have these benefits, small one. But from the other side, not only accommodation, but food, of course, for guides. So it brings more and more interest of people to do that.
Clearly amazing for insects because there's just swarms of insects everywhere. Yeah, and obviously great for the birds as well.
Perfect. Yeah, for birds, they can fly with open beak and then they can eat without eating, let's say.
Yeah, it's funny, since coming to Poland, I've seen cranes and white-tailed seagulls and wild boar, and when I saw them, it was amazing and unusual and unexpected. But everyone I've spoken to so far hasn't understood why that's so surprising and exciting for me, because it just seems that that's just an animal you'd see any day. So yeah, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, we are happy every day to see them. When the water is coming, then life is coming back.
I've just never been somewhere with so much biodiversity before, just from the plant life to the buzz of the insects, which is constant, to the bird song, which is also constant. I've just never heard just so much going on and seen so much going on in one place. I've been to woodlands in Scotland before, which are practically silent. But somewhere like this, you can hear the insects, you can hear the birds, you can hear the water flowing, but there's also areas where the water sits still. There's wetland, there's woodland, they're overlapping. There's a lot going on, there's mess, there's a lack of neatness. This is what is called an alluvial woodland, where the river literally floods the forest. I'm meeting Arthur, who can tell me more.
Hi, nice to meet you. We were dreaming about a really flooded alluvial forest. It is very important for us because it is a part of natural river valley. We are losing all over the Europe such type of habitat. Such sites need to be flooded. And when people changed the rivers, we lose such type of forest. And here, thanks to our action, you can see that water still is in forest.
I think this is the first time that I've seen wetland really intersecting with forest.
This is mosaic. So it is proven that it was never only forest or only meadows. It was mainly mosaic of such habitats in floodplains. We have to accept the wetlands because this is the main magazines of water, and at the same time this is a magazine of fertilizer, of carbon, of everything. So if we not accept the wetland in the catchment, we will not have water.
So it sounds like as well as wildlife and nature, it also benefits people as well.
Of course, it is mainly for people. Wildlife is only an indicator. The quality, the situation with wildlife show us that we are also in danger. When we not understand this in this way, we will not survive in the end.
We're just about to leave the last riverside of the day, and I've just had my absolute highlight from this trip so far. Not only are we standing in this beautiful, luscious green vegetation with the river beside us and in the middle of a wetlands basically, with kayakers going by and the smell of wild garlic, and then the sound of cranes from a distance which then fly over us and call. It's just, everything's just so bright and so green, and there's such a high level of biodiversity, so much going on, and I'm so excited. It was great. The Oder Delta has made me look at water in our landscapes with fresh eyes. Polish people seem much more comfortable alongside nature, whereas the relationship seems more strained in Scotland. And as if to prove it, there is one more really big surprise on this trip.
we've been invited to witness a lynx being released into the wild. The team is busy fitting a radio collar so the lynx's movements can be tracked.
I didn't know they'd look like that. I didn't think they'd be so spotty. I don't know what I expected, but it's so wild looking, which sounds really stupid, but I just didn't think that it would look like that.
The Western Pomeranian Nature Society, or ZTP for short, have been releasing both lynx and bison into the wild in Poland for a number of years.
We released since 2019 74 lynx
Wow,
to the wild.
That's quite a lot.
And to the last year we had minimum 50 kittens wild born.
So this project's making a big difference then?
Yeah, very.
How do people tend to tolerate them? Is there a lot of conflict between people and lynx?
We have not a lot of conflict with lynx. More than 95% of lynx we see the last time when we release.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, really. There are some individuals which can make some problems, but we have a team which is ready for every information which is something is wrong. Sometimes it's only speak with people which saw lynx on the field, but sometimes we have to catch lynx and translocate and do some small training to be more shy for people.
And if someone does have a concern, do they just phone you and you'll go out and help or give them advice?
I think the local people, the society, if they know that there is a team, there is a service around this whole project, they understand. The people like lynx. After the quarantine, training and everything which is needed, we can release this female today in the forest nearby. This is the place where we released a few weeks ago 2 mares. We hope that everything will finish with the kittens next year, maybe.
I'm very excited. I'm interested to know whether she'll run off or just slink off to the side, or what she's going to do, how she's going to react to us. She's growling really loudly at the moment. It's hard to believe that's her living wild now. I feel like we must be standing in an enclosure or something. I can't imagine actually having lynx in Scotland. They just seem too wild to actually be there. I just don't see that as... I don't see it as a Scottish animal or an animal that could live in Scotland, even though I'd love for it to. But it's just not Scotland I've ever known where species like that have existed there.
But lynx are native to Scotland, and my attitude is one that Marcin recognises from Poland not so long ago.
I grew up in a place like this. Around was a forest always, and every free time I spent in the forest, I took the knife, and I was Indian and go to the forest. So at the moment when I see that in the forest I can meet wolf, bison and lynx, thanks to our project, I couldn't even imagine. So this is great, this is crazy, and I will be happy that my kids and other generation will be possible to see this. This is the start of the new great future. Yeah.
The Oder Delta has been an incredible experience. Wetlands, rivers and forests being restored, and missing species returned. But just as exciting has been seeing the real connection local people have with nature. Before I leave Central Europe behind, I want to explore how this wildlife comeback is working in urban areas. This means a really early start to meet local filmmaker Jaz Ellis in central Vienna.
So there's loads of bars in this area. People party till quite late in the night or early in the morning. People can be drinking and not realise that there's a beaver only a few metres away from them. Wow. That was, wow. You can so easily come across a beaver whilst going for a run, a cycle, even sunbathing in the evening. A beaver can just swim past you. I think most of the time people don't even realise how many beavers there are here.
How many are there in Vienna?
There are at least 230 living within the city limits.
And what about Austria?
There are about 8,000, 9,000 living in Austria. It's not a rare sight to see a beaver here.
50 years ago they didn't have any, did they?
Yes, so in 1863, the last beaver of Austria was hunted to extinction. And then in the 70s and 80s, they decided to reintroduce them, like many places in Europe. And since then, every possible location they could live in Vienna now is occupied by beavers.
And how do people coexist with them here? Do they affect people's lives at all?
Obviously, beavers eat trees, and sometimes that can cause some minor problems. But the city handles it pretty well. Usually if a tree is being eaten that shouldn't be, they put up a wire mesh to protect it. If the tree is too far gone and poses a risk to people, then they will fell it and leave it for the beavers. They'll also sometimes distract beavers from trees they shouldn't eat with cuttings. There really don't seem to be many problems. It's a coexistence that most people don't even realise exists.
I'm interested in delving a little deeper into the coexistence issue in such a densely packed urban area. Conservationist George Pop is kindly meeting me by the river to talk more.
There's no way around it. I mean, if you want to have green areas inside a city, you have to accept the fact that wildlife lives there and has its own way of doing things. We have the national parks just outside. That's where the beavers moved into the city. So there's either the choice you coexist, or you just hunt them to extinction again, and nobody wants that anyway. We've been there before. We've reintroduced them in the 80s, and everybody wants them to be around. So that's why I'm really proud about the city of Vienna, because here the wildlife is like protected. Authorities are very convinced that this is a good thing for people living in a city and still get in touch with nature and wildlife. You know, seeing a frog in the water, I think that the little things that just make you, more connected to the natural world. So that's what you have to have in the cities.
So in a weird way, a city can be a safe haven for a wild animal.
It is, yeah, because just living gets harder and harder. The hamsters are perfect examples. They're almost extinct in Europe because agricultural farming just doesn't leave any space for lots of wildlife. And in a city, you have little parks, you have rivers, little ponds, and so for so many creatures, insects, birds, and even mammals, the city is perfect. It just, you need the people that accept and coexist with them. That's the thing.
Vienna is clearly a city which embraces nature, and it's given me much to think about as I head back to Glasgow.
When it comes to nature restoration, I definitely feel better about it, because the way I thought before we started filming this was that everything was getting worse all the time. Anyone trying to make improvements was fighting a losing battle. But when I went abroad and saw what was happening in other countries, and it didn't feel like they were fighting a losing battle and they were hopeful, I feel like Scotland's dragging its feet. It just seems too good to be true, a Scotland like Norway or a Scotland like Poland or Germany in terms of what they've achieved with rewilding.
I'm feeling that Scotland is really lagging behind the rest of Europe. In an effort to convince me that Scotland does have an essence of wildness, the team are taking me to the Highlands in search of an animal I didn't realise we still have here.
You usually find a group of about 3 to 5 young ones with a mother.
We're searching for wild boar. Tierney Lloyd is a filmmaker who has studied them in Scotland for the past couple of years.
How do people tend to tolerate wild boar? Do they tend to like them or not?
There's kind of a mixed bag of opinions about this, but the issues that people have with the boar, especially more traditional landowners, is the mess that they cause either on crops, fields with livestock animals, but also people don't like them because they'll actually come into your garden and root up the ground there. So we need to figure out what mitigations to put in place to stop this so that we can figure out how to live alongside the wild boar. Did you hear that? It's like a snort. Yeah. Oh yeah, got them. Just don't run like that's it.
I loved seeing the boar. They felt like a touch of wildness in Scotland. But we don't have many, and those we do have seem unpopular. So how do countries live alongside animals that we might consider at best inconvenient and at worst dangerous? Welcome to a busy Italy at night. Our destination lies a couple of hours' drive from Rome. We've arrived at our accommodation after midnight. I have no idea what to expect in the morning.
Excuse my I just woke up face, but I've got to record my reactions and wow. I can finally see what it looks like outside and it is incredible. And all the mountains, they're completely forested. And it's amazing, it's beautiful. I've never seen anything like this. It's so loud. There's so many birds.
These are the Apennine Mountains, and just like Norway, 100 years ago these hills were bare. It's home to picturesque villages, the narrowest roads I've ever seen, and wolves and bears. My first stop is to meet the local mayor to get a sense of where nature fits into life here.
The rewilding we're talking about, especially more recently, is something that has happened here in the last 50 or 60 years. That mountain back there was completely bare 70 years ago. There were no trees. So clearly nature has been regenerated here, and it has become increasingly stronger, increasingly beautiful. I decided 40 years ago, when I was 20 years old, to continue to live in this area. And then a point came where, for me, and for many others alongside me, we knew that we needed to protect nature more. The passion for bears is something that infects you.
Do people tend to tolerate the wolves and bears, or do they not seem to like them in the area?
When it comes to acceptance, if you ask a region which doesn't have any bears, if they're in favour of bears, they'll respond 100% yes. But if you ask a region where they exist physically and therefore cause some disturbances, damage, some problems, you won't get that 100%. We should also take into account that we are a generation which never lived alongside these populations of wild animals. This is why, in this area, we tried to experiment with the first Bear Smart community, with this spirit of creating more tolerance, more acceptance of the presence of bears. Why do we do it? Because I'm convinced that if we conserve the bear, the bear will allow us to conserve nature as a whole.
So in these mountains, these forests, even villages, there are apex predators that much of Europe, including Scotland, has forgotten how to live alongside. But they do come with issues.
He broke the net, broke the boards, broke the ceiling. They are animals of great strength. So the chickens were all eaten. Then I started this business again and moved my chicken coop to here. I had the pleasure of meeting people who have this association, and they gave me this fence. I put it up, and I must say, I have not had any more attacks.
Did what happened to your birds change your opinion on bears?
I must admit that first of all, I hated them. Subsequently, however, I understood that this is part of their nature, and that therefore we have to equip ourselves to deal with any challenges the bears bring.
He was still sad about what happened, and it wasn't that the help he'd had since completely took away the pain he felt from losing his birds, but it was enough of a help that he doesn't seem to feel anger towards the bears. He doesn't seem to feel like something bad has to happen to the bears as a result of it. It was interesting to see someone who can think, I shouldn't be vilifying the bears, I should be taking action to stop it from happening again, which makes most sense, really.
The help he was talking about is part of the Bear Smart Community Initiative. Successful coexistence between people and predators is key. I'm meeting Fabrizio and First Berenice from Rewilding Apennines, who will explain more.
When you work on bears and humans coexistence, the main thing you want to do is to avoid new behaviors where they will be used to feed on human resources. When this happens, that's when conflict happens. Now, bears have some space to thrive, so they start to colonize new areas, and we can see them. We can see females with cubs going into new places, which is a strong sign that the population is expanding. And now it's about how do you create the conditions within this territory to allow for this wildlife comeback.
We are building an electric fence for this orchard. It's very important for us, and it's something to show to the people that decide to stay here and to stay in these small communities and to live here in contact with the wildlife, that there is a way to coexist with the wildlife. A lot of people speak about coexistence, but they live in the city, no? And they are not, at the end, they are not involved in this challenge. This is some bear-proof bins that we decide to install. We are doing it because to avoid that the bears can come close to the village or inside the village looking for food.
The places around here are so bear friendly that a bear was actually seen on these steps, and to commemorate that bear they put the statue of a bear here. Fabrizio is offering to take us to a place where seeing bears might be possible. There's no sign of the bears, but something else is happening. An Apennine wolf pack. And they are clearly on the hunt. I didn't think there was any chance I would see a wolf, let alone 3. Suddenly, the air is filled with the distress call of a deer calf. It's over quickly, and the wolves retreat into the forest.
There are a lot of red deer, but the wolves can contain also the population, the wolf and the bear. As you saw, the red deer is the main prey of the wolf with the wild boar. And also the wolves have this important ecological role that is to move normally the herbivores, hunting them. They move them so they cannot have a very big impact always in the same area. So they are just changing maybe side of the mountain or running always, and this is good for the vegetation.
On the walk here, we've seen so many people with their scopes and cameras that have obviously flocked here from miles around. So does this town and towns like it benefit from all these people coming in to look at the wildlife here?
Yeah, this is a very famous, I would say, village to spot the bears. Even if today we saw the wolves hunting, it's important for the economical impact because these villages just can survive because of the tourism due to the nature.
All around the area there are signs of bears, statues of bears, artwork of bears. Would you say that people around here are proud of their bears?
Yes, for sure. People around here are very proud of bear, yeah.
I didn't think it would work as well as it does, or feel as normal as it does. I think it could be Scotland physically, but I can't imagine people wanting it to get to that point. I think when it comes to reintroductions, large predators are probably the hardest ones in terms of public support because I think people are scared.
I just found out some really horrible news, which is that one of the most well-known Marskin brown bears in Italy was shot recently, and she's actually the bear that we were talking to a lot of people about when we were over there. She was a really popular bear. She used to bring her cubs to pick fruit from the trees in one of the towns. People used to watch her. Loads and loads of tourists would come to see her. And it just shows that even though when I was over there, things seem to work in terms of coexistence, but people aren't perfect. Systems aren't perfect. But I'm glad that it's made people think. I'm glad that it's gone far. I'm glad that it's been posted about online. It doesn't make up for it, but if people talk about these issues, then there's got to be something positive that comes of things like this. Predators. Such an emotive and divisive subject. Which species are we willing to tolerate? Who gets to decide? What drives our prejudice or influences our acceptance? I'm travelling to a surprising location to get a fresh perspective on the role of large predators. I'm meeting marine biologist Richard Shucksmith.
In Scotland, I hear so many people, we don't have apex predators, and they're all talking about the land. But if you look out there in the sea, we have apex predator. We have probably the best apex predator in the whole world, actually. Orcas, they nail everything. Great whites, you name it, they get nailed by killer whales. There's just nothing beats a killer whale. The megafauna really, really inspires people, you know, and that megafauna is only there because of everything else below it. Yeah, below it. So if we didn't have healthy seas, you know, there wouldn't be the food there, what the orcas like, because they catch seals and porpoises mainly around Shetland. They wouldn't be here in abundance for the orcas to come in and hunt, and you wouldn't have orcas.
This marine health is really why I'm here. We struggled to find anywhere in Europe which was doing marine rewilding at any meaningful scale. And I started to think, well, why not Scotland?
How would you compare marine life around Shetland to marine life on a wider context around Europe as a whole?
I would say that we're up there, like, you know, on the very top level of marine life within a European context. We have an amazing productivity of seas around the UK and around Shetland. They're highly productive. You've got this 1,600 miles of coastline with a strip from 0 down to 30 metres of kelp. You have got a mega biodiversity hotspot, really. One of the reasons I really love Shetland is the seabird colonies, and it's just amazing to see sort of a thriving, intense colony which is supported by the amazing marine life we get around Shetland.
I don't have words. It's the best thing I've ever seen. Well, 14,000 gannets nest here, and gannets are my favourite birds. I just love when we came in, like, you see the odd gannet and then you get close and then suddenly they're all overhead and you get here and they're just everywhere.
This is one of the wild wonders of Scotland, and it's mainly because of our rich seas that this happens.
It's such an inhospitable environment for us, and it feels so wild out here. So I didn't think I'd come to Shetland and have my favourite wildlife experience. There's no beating this.
For me, this seems like a brilliant opportunity for Scotland to make a statement that we are serious about rewilding our marine ecosystems. These seas could be the envy of the world.
In Scotland, are there any management practices that we could change to make marine life healthier?
I think we should get into regional management, because Shetland is very different to like the West Coast and the sea locks. And what would really help the West Coast of Scotland and the sea locks is a 3-mile exclusion zone to scallop dredging and trawling. So back in the 1980s, that was the case, and then in the mid-1980s they removed that and allowed people in to dredge it, and basically we took all the fish out of it. So the connectivity of the sea means our ability to rewild the sea is actually always there. If we've got areas which are being highly impacted, if we can remove that impact, it will naturally recolonise, and within 10 years it would look a very different place to what it did. If we could just grasp this and actually act upon it, we could be world leaders on protecting the marine environment and managing it in a way which is great for people and for the environment and for climate change. Anything is possible. It's having the will and the political will to do it.
Inspired by Richard's words and his mention of the West Coast, I feel I can't finish this journey without seeing it for myself. I've come to a small village where local people are rewilding a sea loch, returning oysters and seagrass to where they once thrived. They've called it sea wilding.
Did you say you've done much snorkeling, Flo?
No, maybe when I was 10 I went for about a minute in a swimming pool and I think I breathed in some water and never did it again.
Marine conservation is something that has been really overlooked, to be honest, in our country and across Europe, and to be honest, really across the world. And particularly we're sort of starting to get a handle on the need to do conservation terrestrially, but the ocean feels like it's lagging behind there a little bit. But we have, particularly in Scotland, a really unique opportunity to be at the forefront of marine restoration.
When it comes to wildlife in the seas, I think most people get excited by, whales and sharks. So what's so important about kind of the little guys almost, the oysters and the seagrass?
Yeah, oysters and seagrass both actually form a really critical part of the ecosystem in the ocean. So it's almost like you need a forest to support all the animals that live within a forest. Both oysters and seagrass provide that role within the ocean. So they provide habitats. They also provide the base of the food chain. So small creatures can live on the seagrass and on the oysters, and then bigger creatures feed on those, bigger creatures feed on those, and then by having these healthy bases to the ecosystem, it supports the whole of the food chain right up until the whales and the dolphins that we like to see, the seagulls, the otters.
You're talking about the community. What's their involvement with the project?
Oh, the community were the foundation of Seawilding getting started, so they are kind of involved really throughout all of the projects, and they're kind of the overriding theme of all of our projects is having community involvement. And so we try and have as many events as we can where communities can get involved, helping with the oysters, helping with putting the seagrass seeds in their bags ready to plant them, helping harvest the seagrass seeds. And I think it's really important because the community can see what's happening here. They know that they're stakeholders and that the work that they're doing is having a positive impact in protecting their loch. And I think that has a really positive impact for mental health for people in this kind of time with so much eco-anxiety. But we're just one isolated sea loch in Scotland, and if we want to see real meaningful change for the ocean environment, then we need to see that happening at a big scale, at a seascape scale, across the whole of Scotland, across the whole of Europe.
It was beautiful. It's like, well, it is an underwater forest. It feels so vulnerable as well, though, really delicate. And
buzzing. I loved it. It was so good. I want to go out again. We've been to quite a few countries now and we've seen some brilliant projects, but to actually see them happening in Scotland and to feel positive about what's happening in Scotland is just really nice, because you don't have to go abroad hundreds of miles away to see nature restoration in action, to see people doing brilliant work. So it's something I needed to see in Scotland, and I'm just glad that after all we've seen, the last few days have probably been some of the most inspiring work that I've seen just here in Scotland.
But a few projects here and there aren't enough. As Richard said in Shetland, Scotland could be a world leader in marine rewilding. And if we can do it at sea, we can also do it on land. This has been an incredible journey, and it's coming to a close here in Glen Affric, one of the few places in Scotland that provides a glimpse into what once was and what could be again. Trying to put my feelings about this experience into words isn't easy.
I've taken so much from this whole project. I used to think everything was getting worse and nothing was getting better, but I don't feel like that anymore, and I feel like in Scotland we have the opportunity to make things better again. It's really just up to whether people want to. And seeing that in Europe really just shows me how possible it is, and it doesn't seem as hard as it once did, and I don't know why it felt impossible, and I don't know why I thought things were always getting worse, but I don't feel like that anymore. I think one thing as well that this whole journey has really made me think about is just how much we all suffer from shifting baseline syndrome. A lot of people, and myself in the past, would look at the countryside in Scotland and think that was quite natural and that we were doing quite well, but actually we're not doing well. Scotland's a really nature-depleted country, and because we don't know any different, it's hard to understand that.
The recovery of nature is a job for everyone. Landowners, farmers, charities and government all need to play their part. Many of them are already doing so, but it's also a job for communities and people. We cannot see this as just a gesture of goodwill, but an absolute necessity.
Is ecosystem health, which protects every single thing, whether it's a plant or a human or a whale or a fly, anything. That's really the biggest thing I took away from all these countries we went to, is just living alongside nature is so much normal for them than it is for us. So maybe in 50 years in Scotland we'll think of the beaver in the way that they do over in Poland, for example, and someone will come from some distant country and say, wow, beaver, and we'll shrug and say, yeah, we've always lived with them. And maybe we won't even realise that 100 years ago we didn't have them.
The time is now, and we have to be brave. I really hope that as a nation we will be. And if rewilding can happen in Italy, Germany, Poland, Austria and Norway, then I'd like to know, why not Scotland?